Well, I had a dilemma. This is a hostess ho-ho. Ho-ho. I didn't come up with that name. Maybe Santa Claus did. But it actually beats their other product. The name of that one is Ding Dongs. So it's like Hostess, the brand that has tasty snacks and really ill-advised product names. But I digress. Here's what was going on. Two of my kids, it was time for snacks, and I went to the cupboard and I found one ho-ho. What do? They both wanted it. So my wife, she had some good advice. Here's what she advised me to do. She said, well, here's what you should do. You should pull a King Solomon. Know what that means, a King Solomon? Well, you're going to find out. Here's what we're doing. Rise and Fall, the story of Solomon. We're teaching through the Old Testament book of 1 Kings. Last week, we looked at the first half of chapter 3. This week, we're going to get to the second half of chapter 3. So here's what happened in the first half. First half of chapter 3, God appeared to Solomon in a dream, and here is what he said to Solomon. Chapter 3, verse 5. God said to Solomon, ask for whatever you want me to give you. What an amazing opportunity. God asked Solomon, he says, name it, what do you want? And what we saw in the first half of this chapter is, well, Solomon, he didn't do what we might expect him to do. He didn't ask for wealth. And Solomon, he didn't ask for long life for himself. Rather, he asked for wisdom. Wisdom so that he could lead and that he could serve other people. Verse 10, the Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for this. God said yes. God gave Solomon wisdom like none other. And so immediately after that, after the first half of chapter 3, the passage for today is what comes next. And what we get to do in this passage is witness Solomon's renowned wisdom in action. The second half of the chapter is really designed to be a demonstration of the wisdom that God has given to Solomon. It begins this way, verse 16. Now 2 prostitutes came to the king and stood before him. Pause. If you know this story, maybe you're like, oh, yes, this is familiar. This is the story of the 2 moms. Well, kind of. Because that's not how the Bible introduces them. Rather, the Bible introduces them as, 2 prostitutes. See, these are 2 women who became moms through prostitution, and that changes this passage a little bit. The reason this passage tells us their occupation is because in the ancient days, powerful kings, they didn't care a lick about prostitutes. Prostitutes were the least likely people in the land to receive justice. Hear it again, verse 16. Now, 2 prostitutes came to the king and stood before him. See that? That's supposed to surprise us. It would have surprised them back in their day. They'd be like, what? What are 2 prostitutes doing in the presence of the king? That's not the way it works. That wasn't normal. They hear that. They see that. Here's what they're thinking. They're thinking, this king is different. This is a king who actually cares about people. This is a king who values everyone. And now, thousands of years later, here's what we recognize. This king reflects the king, Jesus. This is a reflection of Jesus, because Jesus did that. Jesus, he didn't just spend time with the religious people who were doing good things. No, he spent time with the outcasts. He spent time with the moral outcasts, like the woman who was caught in adultery. He spent time with the racial outcasts, like the Samaritans. He spent time with the physical outcasts, people who had leprosy. He spent time with the political outcasts, like the tax collectors. We see with Jesus, every person, without exception, is valued and treated with dignity and respect, without exception. young and old, male and female, black and white, the homeless, the impoverished, the mentally ill, the physically disabled, the morally broken. To Jesus, every life is sacred. Every single one of them. And this is a pretty familiar part of Jesus' teaching. So I want to share a point of clarity because it's also something that can get misunderstood. See, Jesus, he valued and cared for everybody, but that doesn't mean that he endorsed everything that they were doing. See, Jesus, well, he didn't endorse prostitution, but he did value the prostitutes. And Jesus, he didn't endorse treason, but he did value the tax collectors. He was showing us, following Jesus, followers of Jesus, we're called to do the same kind of thing. We're called to treat all people with value and respect, even if we don't agree with their choices, even if we don't agree with their decisions. And I might even go as far as saying this, especially if we don't agree with their decisions. Because if we agree, then it's really not all that hard to treat them with value and respect. A lot harder to do it when we don't agree. So let's pause here in the story, because this is a real applicable part of this teaching, and ask ourselves, well, how about, me? Who is the most difficult person or maybe group of people for me to treat with respect? Who is it that riles me up? Who is it that I have a tendency to criticize? Who is it that I undervalue? There isn't a single person that you will meet this week who isn't valuable to God. The passage continues this way, verse 19. During the night, this woman's son died because she lay on him. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine how this mom felt? Pain. And not only pain, guilt. And pain and guilt in life aren't just unfortunate. We see here they are also very dangerous. They can drive us to justify bad, sinful decisions. Like this, verse 20. So she got up in the middle of the night and took my son from my side while I, your servant, was asleep. She put him by her breast and put her dead son by my breast. See, when she discovered what had been done, this woman, she swapped her dead child with her friend's living child while everybody else was sleeping. Sneaky. She didn't consider how this would affect the other mom. It was going to double the corporate amount of pain that was being experienced, but she wasn't thinking about that because in her grief, she was fixated solely on how to benefit herself. Pain and grief can do that. They can turn us inward. See, there is a word that we use to describe that. That word is this: self-absorbed. Self-absorbed. And that's not just her. Self-absorbed, well, that tendency is there for us as well. Because we live in a world that is enamored with self. Our culture teaches us to focus on me, my feelings, my desires, my appearance, my wants, and to put those as our top priorities. And I'll say this, there is a part of me that likes this. I mean, what's not to like about on-demand streaming? I think it's pretty nice. We no longer have to wait until Thursday at 7 o'clock to watch your favorite show. We can watch what we want, when we want, where we want. There's some nice conveniences that are a part of this. We have to also realize there's a danger. There is a danger that we have in living in a culture that caters to me. There's a danger in living in a culture where things are on demand for me. And here's the danger. Those things, they shape us on the inside. And I realize I have to become more aware of my own tendency towards self-absorption. I have to fight harder against narcissistic tendencies. Anybody want a surefire remedy to self-absorption? It's right here in this passage, verse 17. Mom says, I had a baby while she was there with me. I had a baby. You want to get rid of self-absorption? Yep, that'll do it. Because it's pretty hard to be self-absorbed when you are cleaning up, a diaper blow at 2:30 in the morning. It's fun. There's also a lot of truth here. Because if I look at my own life, here's one of the things I realize. There is nothing that has made me more aware of my own self-centeredness than becoming a parent. Because once you become a parent, you will never be your own top priority again. Before that, it's like you can do what you want to do and kind of when you want to do it. You can, if you want to, before kids, you can sleep all the way through the night. You can go to the bathroom alone. But once you have kids, you get like 10 minutes a day of freedom, and you got to decide, what am I going to do with that 10 minutes? Am I going to take a shower, or am I going to go over in that corner and just cry? Parenting, it's hard. And God shows us it's also very important. Two people in here, they were parents. And what God shows us is that the purpose of parenting, it is to do everything in your power to influence your children to have a desire to follow Jesus. That is more important than the grades they get. That is more important than the career they pursue. That is more important than how well they do in sports or in arts. God, he put that this way in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, verse 6, says, these commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Parents, God, he's saying that to you. Impress the ways of the Lord on your children. And that doesn't just automatically happen. Such parents see parenting as worthy of their very best efforts, of their most fervent prayers, of their largest investments of time. They search for ways to improve their skills, through books and through podcasts, through interacting with other parents. Yes, it takes time. Yes, it takes energy. And it will mean you don't do all the other things that you would otherwise be able to do. It may affect your career advancement. It may affect and limit the amount of time you spend on your hobby. It may postpone some personal dreams. It requires sacrifice. Those of you who are parents, and especially if you got little kids in the house, most people will never know all the things you will do. Most people will never know all the sacrifices you make. God does. Thank you. And those sacrifices, they're good for us. 1 Kings chapter 3, Solomon. He's got one baby. And he's got two women, each claiming to be the true mom. So how did he know? What did Solomon do? Well, today, this really wouldn't be an issue, right? We could just run a DNA test, boom, there you go. But they didn't have that back in 970 BC. And so it's a different scenario. So let's try and imagine the scene that 1 Kings 3 paints for us. Two women, and they're arguing with no end in sight. The intensity of their voice, it rises. The baby being held by one of the soldiers is wailing. The throne room is in chaos. King Solomon, in that moment, he stands up and he thunders, enough, enough, enough. I have made my decision. Verse 24, then the king said, bring me a sword. So they brought a sword for the king. Whispers abound. What is Solomon going to do? A sword. Who is he going to strike? A little bit drastic, don't you think? Well, Solomon, he examines the sword. You know, it's heavy, it's sharp. He hands it back to its owner, saying this, verse 25, cut the living child in two and give half to one and half to the other. The room is stunned. Kill the baby? Really, Solomon? Kill the baby. The true mother exclaims, verse 26, please, my lord, give her the living baby. Don't kill him. She's saying, I withdraw my claim. Well, the second woman, she sees her anguish and she digs in even more. Verse 26 continues. She says, neither I nor you shall have him. Cut him in two. Half is enough for me. See, the first woman, she was willing to give up her claim. She was willing to sacrifice her wants, her desires for this child. Do you know what you call that? Do you know what you call a person who is willing to sacrifice their own wants and their own desires for a child? Here's what you call them: mom. Right? Mom. That's what you call a mom. Verse 27. Then the king gave his ruling. He said, give the living baby to the first woman. Do not kill him. She is his mother. Wise ruling. That's what Solomon did. Do you know what I did? So I had one ho-ho. I had two kids that wanted it. So Sarah, she encouraged me. She said, well, pull a King Solomon, which means, well, cut it in half. And that's a fair option, but I had a better idea. Here's what I did. With them all watching, I took the ho-ho and I ate it. Problem solved. Yeah, there's more than one way to solve a problem. Parenting has a few perks, but it didn't turn out quite as well for me as it did for Solomon, because I ended up having not just one, I had two unhappy kids, and Sarah wasn't all that impressed with me either. Well, here we go. 1 Kings chapter 3. I want us to ask this question with this passage, and it's how did Solomon find out which one of these was the true mom? How did he do that? Maybe you know the story and you know how it played out, but how was he able to figure out which one of these two moms, who both claimed to be the true mom, how did he figure it out? Verse 27, then the king gave his ruling, give the living baby to the first woman, do not kill him, she is his mother. That's important. That's pivotal. That is key to understanding this passage. Solomon, he identified the true mom by defining one attribute. That attribute, it was this: sacrifice. Sacrifice. He recognized the true mom would care more about her child's well-being than about herself. And that is true for parenting and more. Why did this work? Why does his strategy work? Well, it worked because, remember the context here. God had just done this. Verse 12, God had said, I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. See, God just gave Solomon wisdom like none other. Immediately after that comes this passage with the two moms, where we get to witness wisdom being demonstrated, where we get wisdom in action. And here's what we see. Wisdom is able to see more than the momentary dilemma. It is able to connect with a deeper principle. In this case, that deeper principle that wisdom called out, the deeper principle here was this: the essence of love. Why did Solomon's strategy work? Verse 26. The woman whose son was alive was deeply moved out of love for her son. Out of love for her son. The essence of love, do you see it? It's not me. It's not my desires. It's not my fulfillment. Verse 26, the woman whose son was alive was deeply moved out of love for her son and said to the king, please, my lord, give her the living baby. Don't kill him. Contrary to popular belief, the essence of love, it's not fulfillment. It's sacrifice. According to the Bible, the center, the essence of love is not fulfillment, it's sacrifice. To love in the biblical sense of the word means to have an inner orientation, to want and to work for the good of the other person. It's not just a feeling. It's not just a closeness. It's not just a chemistry. It's not just being agreeable. It's not just, well, how can they benefit me? It is a self-sacrificing willingness to act on the other person's behalf in their best interest. And that is not what you see on The Bachelor. Is that fair? When you see shows like that and people say, well, I'm in love, or I'm falling in love with you. Here's what that really typically means. That means, well, I like what you are doing for me. You are giving me the feels. Understand, that is not this. This, the way that the Bible defines love, it is different. Paul articulates it this way in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4. He says, love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. That last one, it is not self-seeking. That is not the way that love is defined in the world around us. But the Bible clearly says love is not self-seeking. To love is to want and to work for the good of the other person. It's saying, if I notice someone who is lonely, love is saying, well, I'm going to try and connect with them. If I notice someone who's on a dangerous path, love is saying, well, I'm going to try to share the truth with them. If I notice someone who is discouraged, love is saying, well, I'm going to try to encourage them. Solomon, he knew the true mom was who she was because the true mom had love. She was willing to sacrifice. To love is to want and work for the good of the other person. Let's apply this passage to our own lives. And we can do that really by asking, well, how am I doing with that one? Think of specific people in your life. You know, a spouse, a parent, a friend, a sibling, a co-worker. Do I love? What does that mean? What does that look like? Well, love doesn't ask, what are you doing for me? Rather, love asks, what can I do for them? Love doesn't ask, well, how do they make me happy? Rather, it asks, how can I make them happy? It's not self-absorbed. It's not self-seeking. Tune in to their needs. Ask, how can I help them? How can I serve them? How can I bless them? What's one thing that I can do above and beyond the normal to serve and to bless them today? 1 Kings chapter 3, verses 23 through 26, the king said, this one says, my son is alive and your son is dead. Well, that one says, no, your son is dead and mine is alive. Then the king said, bring me a sword. So they brought a sword for the king. Then he gave an order, cut the living child in two and give half to one and half to the other. The woman whose son was alive was deeply moved out of love for her son and said to the king, please, my lord, give her the living baby. Don't kill him. Solomon discovered who the true mom was by observing who was willing to sacrifice. Because love is not just something we say, it's something we do. You should be able to see it. To love is to work for and want what's in the best interest of the other, even if it means sacrifice for me. Sound familiar? You know, typically when we celebrate communion or the Lord's Supper, we tend to think, this is kind of a comforting thing for us, and it can be something that brings us peace. But recognize that is not the way that this originally played out for Jesus. It was the night before the cross. Jesus, he knew what was going to happen on the next day. So when he was gathered with his followers, he took the Passover bread and he said to them this is my body. Do you understand the significance of that statement? I imagine you've heard that many times. But you understand what Jesus was saying when he said, this is my body. Jesus, he was saying, I want you to know, I want to be real clear on this. I'm not just a good teacher. He was saying, I want you to recognize I'm not just a good moral leader that has some, kind of wise ideas. When Jesus said, this is my body, Jesus of Nazareth, he was saying, I want you to know I am God. And I came here. I came to this earth because, there's some things that aren't going too well. You recognize that there is sin that is in this world. We see that. We know that. It's all around us. And he also recognizes it's not just in this world. It's in me. And it's in you. And we can't do enough to be able to get that out of us. And so Jesus said, I don't want that for you. He came and he said, this is my body. It's broken for you. He's talking about the cross. Is Jesus saying, I am paying your price. I am covering your sin. I am taking it away. I want to give you redemption. I want to give you renewal. I want to give you restoration. And then he took the cup and he said, this represents my blood. This is going to be sacrifice for me. This. Did Jesus enjoy this? Well, no. Did this feel good? Well, no. But what does the Bible call this? The word the Bible uses for this, the Bible says this is love. This is love. Love isn't just something you say. Love, it's something you do. You should be able to see it. And we sure can. So as you see this, remember his sacrifice. And remember, you are loved more than you can possibly imagine by the Lord God Almighty.